All right, so I usually talk a lot about the U.S. news a lot, but I do think that I might want to touch upon some Singaporean news as well, because I think finally, I do think that Singapore is kind of like a lagging indicator to what's happening in the world. So I usually look at what's happening in the United States. And then that's kind of how we kind of see the leading indicator of how things are actually going. So inflation has already been a thing for quite some time, and only Singapore is finally seeing the decade high of 3.3% inflation happening in Singapore from our previous CPI data in Singapore as well. And this actually happened, I think, last week, actually a few days ago. And then afterwards, we finally received chicken shortage happening. So for Singapore, we actually get most of our imports of chicken mainly from Malaysia. And because Malaysia basically said that they're going to be halting exports of chicken over to Singapore, which is also, I would like to imagine, that's our main source of poultry. I do think that that's going to be a huge problem in terms of food shortage. And of course, a food shortage is actually being caused by supply chain issues as a whole. Okay, and that's and let's be honest, we in my channel I've already talked about this possibility happening very very early on, and this was brought forth from the 24th of February. Okay, and the reason why it was on the 24th of February is because during the Ukraine invasion by Russia, okay, the Ukraine invasion by Russia was actually one of the triggering point for why I think a food shortage is going to be happening. Okay, when that actually happened, multiple commodities actually went up in price. Okay, mainly oil prices, wheat prices, palladium, lithium, aluminum, and so on. These are basically the commodities that would be usually the main import and export of Ukraine and Russia. Okay, and especially with the whole invasion happening back in February and March, okay, the main commodities that were mainly getting spiked up in price were all these. Okay, and among these commodities, one that actually stood out a lot, which is wheat. Okay, I actually explained about this in some episode for some news covering or a weekly video. I'm not very sure. I've been uploading quite a lot. Okay, but in those videos, I actually said before that wheat prices going up is going to be causing a ripple effect for food, the entire food chain in the world. Okay, with wheat prices going up, people would most likely be like, oh, okay, let me just not eat rice, bread, noodles, pasta, whatever it is. Okay, I'm just gonna not consume wheat. Okay, and in you not consuming wheat because of the rising prices, you're gonna be consuming other things. You're gonna be consuming your proteins and your fats. Okay, those are your other macros. Okay, in your proteins, you're gonna have your poultry, you're gonna have your red meats, you're gonna have your soy, or whatever it is. Those are all going to essentially be going up in price because how supply and demand work is the higher the demand, and how if the supply actually stays the same, prices are going to be going up because with more demand, it simply means that the supply can be sold at a higher price for whoever who wants it even more. Okay, so prices of poultry, red meat, pork, white meat, I don't care. All those proteins are going up in price. Okay, and that was actually the first layer. Okay, and that's going to be continuing because if those actually goes up in price, and then people will start to think, oh, okay, maybe I would like to go vegan. Okay, and then suddenly vegetable prices go up in price. Suddenly, flour price goes up in price, which then again that's wheat. So you're gonna have a lot of different so-called ripple effect that's gonna be happening in the entire market in terms of the food commodities side of things. Okay, so now let's bring it back to in Singapore. Okay, so in Singapore we don't really have our own production of any food commodities. Okay, we are mainly constantly importing from other countries at large. Okay, and for poultry, in terms of chicken, we actually import a lot of them from Malaysia. Okay, and like I said before in those videos about how wheat prices is going to be causing a weird spiral on prices, is going to be doing the same here. Okay, and I actually explained this in my previous news, which was posted yesterday, where I actually explained in different layers, and I thought that this actually make for good content, so I actually kind of recreate the content for my weekly video as well. So how I actually see it is because if chicken price, okay, well, basically we're gonna have a shortage of chicken in Singapore. Okay, so basically chicken prices are going to be going up because the remaining chicken that's going to be in the market, the supply is basically being capped. Okay, and demand is going to essentially stay the same. Okay, aka demand is now higher than supply. Okay, and that's going to be causing chicken prices to go up. Fair. Okay, same comparison again. So now for people who think that okay, chicken is now too much. Okay, it's now too high of a price for me to consume on a daily basis. Now I have to look for other alternatives. Okay, now I might be looking at pork. I might be looking at beef. I might be looking at mutton. I might be looking at veal. Okay, it doesn't matter what are the other options. Okay, those alternatives are basically going to have a sudden spike up in demand as well. Okay, so all those other proteins are going to be having a spike up in demands, and essentially people might just be like, okay, you know what? If that's the case, then maybe we're not going to be consuming as much protein. We might actually be consuming more carbs. Okay, we might be consuming more rice. We might be consuming more potatoes. Okay, and even potatoes is also on a shortage to a certain extent in Singapore as well. So then you kind of bring forth all these sort of alternatives, getting into a very weird sudden spike up in demand due to the fact one particular commodity is having a very, very obvious cap. Okay, and of course with India actually coming out to say that they're going to be capping the exports of sugar for the entire world as well, and India is a huge exporter for sugar. I'm thinking that Singapore is probably going to be affected to a certain extent as well, and that's going to be a huge issue as well because, well, sugar is one thing, and of course the alternative for sugars is of course going to be your stevia. It's going to be your sweeteners. It's going to be your milk. It's going to be all those other alternatives and all those additives, preservatives, and additional stuffs are all going to be so-called the alternatives that are going to be going up in price as well. So that's kind of how food shortage actually go about. You just need one commodity chain to break down, and the rest is going to just follow. It's kind of like a domino effect. Okay, and that's kind of my concern. Okay, and of course, I do think that at some point, I think in the very, very near future, I feel that our country's leader would most likely be trying to find a proper way to actually stop this sudden halt of export from Malaysia in terms of our chicken. But I do think that Singapore would definitely need to kind of speed up on the process of making new trade deals with other countries to actually get a new import of chickens. Okay, in hopes for us to actually cover on this demand, because like I said before, I do think that this is going to be causing some form of a domino effect. Okay, if chicken were to ultimately fail, okay, mark my words on this, it is going to cause a huge chain reaction to all the other food commodities and all the other food group. And this is not just going to be happening in Singapore, it's going to be happening worldwide. Okay, I have already seen this problem back in February. I'm surprised that we are only seeing this in May for Singapore, which is why I said that Singapore is a lagging indicator. And that's kind of why I'm so obsessed with the US news and such. But yeah, anyway, that's all I have for the food shortages side of things. I thought that it was kind of a interesting topic for me to actually talk more about Singapore news. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.